All right, welcome to another Saturday Sauna Night podcast. This is episode 11, and I'm going to be flying solo here tonight, going over some ice fishing stuff. It's December 1st, and we have a number of lakes around the area that have a little bit of ice. Some actually had fishable ice back a few weeks ago in November. We had kind of a cold snap. Then it warmed up again around Thanksgiving, had a little bit of rain. Some areas of the UP had heavy wet snow, others had rain. And here in my neck of the woods, we got a little bit of rain, but kind of missed out on the snow, which on the one hand, I am wanting to get out and get that fat tire bike out on the trails, but on the other hand, I want to get out on the early ice and ice fish, and I'd rather not have to fight a foot of heavy wet slush and have to worry about that weighing down on the already thin ice. So I have a bunch of toys and goodies out here I'm gonna look at, and some of these things I've found helpful over the last few years as I've gotten more into ice fishing, especially pretty much gonna be focusing on ice fishing for trout. And these techniques, I'm talking early season, but they also work really good in the spring and certain lakes, even in the middle of winter. So some of these things I've used before and have had good success. Other ones I haven't used, and I'm really excited to try. So I guess I'll start with just my main jigging rod here, and this is actually brand new. This is an ultralight. It's a panfish rod. I think this one's made by HT Enterprises. They make pretty nice, affordable ice fishing stuff. Looks cool. It's got a cool blue foam handle on it. And I think this one right now is strung with, well, it's got this main green line here. That's actually 8-pound test, which is kind of overkill. And then I have this, I think this is 3 or 4-pound clear ice line on the end here. And right now I just have this little, you can kind of get it in focus there. It's a little Wonder Bread jig, and this one actually has glowing dots on it too. The chartreuse dots on it glow. This is a tiny jig. It's got to be maybe around 1/16 of an ounce. It's tungsten, which tungsten jigs, they're more pricey, but they're nice. You can really feel the bottom well. And this jig, this can't be more than 1/16 of an ounce probably. Tiny little hook on it. But this jig actually pulled in some nice fish for me last winter. I actually caught a few of my first, I won't say my first brown trout ever, but my first, nice brown trout. With this little jig, actually the same day, pulled 2 up through the ice that were, I think one of them was 15.5 inches and the other was over 18 inches. So big fish sometimes will hit really little baits, I guess. Got a few nice rainbow trout with this one too. Haven't really had a chance to try it for brookies yet because I didn't really get out on any brook trout lakes last winter. There's so few of them around the UP, and so that's something I am looking to try. Actually, I take that back. I think I may have caught one right at the end of the season. We went down and we fished a tiny little brook trout pond that I'm actually hoping to get out on here soon in December. We actually fished it, I think, April 1st or 2nd, and there was still a lot of ice. And I think one of the fish we had might have been on this jig. Anyway, that's going to be my main trout jigging rod. I'll probably use it for perch as well a little bit, and if I do get out at all for bluegill or anything like that. So it's an ultralight, 24-inch. Excited to try it out. It's like got a nice flex, but it doesn't feel super flimsy. Feels like it's got a little bit of a spine to it. My other rod I actually have here in this little contraption that you probably can't see very well. I'm going to see if I can spin the camera a little bit here. So this is a jaw jacker, if you can see it. Let's tilt that down. So I actually saw these first on a YouTube channel that I absolutely love called the Fishing Doctor's Adventures. Highly recommend you check his stuff out if you have any interest in really fishing anything, but um, lots of videos on targeting brook trout, rainbow trout through the ice and open water, but the ice fishing videos really are helpful. One of the one of the techniques he likes to use on the ice is this thing called a jaw jacker. So it's basically a rod holder, but you bend your rod down and lock it into position here. It's got this little loop that holds it down, kind of on this little triggering mechanism, and you can't see it, but dangling off the edge of the bar here is my bait, so that'd be down in the water. And you can make adjustments on the tension and the length. This is, I think this is a 24-inch medium light ugly stick I have on here. I don't know if that's the rod I'm gonna always want to use on here, but we're gonna try it. And I was too lazy to here, let me grab my model fish here. He'll be my stand-in for a real fish. This is my little model rainbow trout. But I was too lazy to take the jig off because I'm actually going to be using this in a couple days. So hopefully I don't poke my eye out here. I got a little tungsten jig on there, but I'll show you how this thing works. So I have it loaded, the jig's down in the water. I'd probably have just a little waxworm or a spike or maybe a minnow head or something, depending on what I'm fishing for. Right, here comes my rainbow trout. Watch this. Watch this. Here, let's try this. And there it goes. So basically any action on that jig, and right now I just have this little got tangled up around itself. Jeez, hope that doesn't happen. This another little tungsten jig, probably a 16th ounce or even smaller than that. This one's like a, can't really see it good on the camera, but it's like blue and chartreuse. Kind of got some fire tiger stuff going on. But so this thing, a fish pulls on it, that triggers this to go off, right? Pulls up, sets the hook right away, and then it can kind of fight the fish for you, while you're running over. So it's like a tip up, but better. This is just the standard one where you set your rod in place and set that and let it sit in the water. It's nice because a lot of the times I found a lot of the trout I've caught have hit like completely still baits, like not moving at all. Total dead stick. See if I can get myself. Oh, there we go. Back in position. So really excited to try that out. I'm gonna hook this back up so I don't get this little hook through a finger. There we go. Really excited to try that out. They do make a more expensive model of this. Thank you for your service, friend. They do make a more expensive model of this that takes batteries and actually jigs your bait for you. But this is just the standard one, which should work pretty nicely, I think. Really excited to try it. So this Saturday, I'm going to be getting out right around sunrise on a lake that I actually went and checked out. I checked out the ice last Friday, and there was 3 inches at least of really nice, clear, solid ice. Really hard to chisel through, and I had a hand auger, and it was hard to drill. It was hard to get a hole started, but spent a couple hours out there kind of just appreciating being able to find solid ice that early, and didn't catch anything, but it was the middle of the day, and I wasn't really trying too hard. I actually had my my tip-ups with that I had rigged for pike, because I was hoping out at the camp I was deer hunting at that there's a lake with some pike and walleye and other things in it there, and I was hoping there would be fishable ice there, but that lake didn't quite have ice I felt safe going out on. So This particular lake I visited last week, I'm going to again Saturday. It's a trout lake, so it's got stocked rainbow trout and brown trout, and I've never really had a lot of success at it, but I've also kind of fished it. I think at sort of the down times of year. Um, I a lot of my trout I do really well during June and July for open water fishing. August not so much, and the only times I've ever been out to this lake have been pretty much pretty much in August. I visited it in the spring once, but I was fly fishing, and I think I was getting some hits from some little rainbow trout, but I actually caught some creek chubs that are in the lake that were coming up and hitting the dry flies. So that was pretty odd. But it's an interesting lake. It's really dark water, really dark, and it it's got some really shallow areas. The bay that we'll probably be hanging out in most of the time, where it's pretty well frozen, is pretty shallow, anywhere from 2 feet to maybe 8 feet, and then kind of at the end of the bay, it starts dropping off a little bit. So we'll probably early in the morning when we get there, before sunrise, we'll probably hang out in the shallows, and then kind of gradually work our way out toward that drop off as the light starts to get a little brighter. What else I got here? So that was my jaw jacker that I'm really excited to try. These are just some good old fashioned tip ups. The way I have these rigged right now, I just kind of left them from the end of last season. I'd actually rigged these up for perch, but I think this setup will work pretty nicely um, for trout. So if I can get this, it's a little bit of a mess here. That's one downside to this setup. But if you can see, they're pretty tiny. I got two little treble hooks. I think these are like size 16 or something. On this isn't like fluorocarbon or anything. It's just like 6 pound test ice line. But I think it'll do the trick, especially on a pretty dark lake. If I was fishing a crystal clear lake, which I have fished some of those in the wintertime, I would definitely switch out to fluorocarbon, something super clear. But that's just my good old fashioned tip up. I don't usually even put a split shot on these with trout because I'll have these set in 10 feet of water at most, and usually up just below the ice. So there's really no sense in putting a weight on it. Once you get the waxworms or whatever, it just gives it a more natural feel, I think, to the fish when you have it just hanging out there in the water. And some of these will probably be setting in 2-3 feet of water, so like these hooks will barely be under the ice. So I have two of those. Not gonna be able to use all this stuff at the same time because, of course, in Michigan you have a 3 line limit, which is totally fine. But I do have a second tip up rigged up basically the same. Few other things before I get into my bait box here. Um, Hopefully I won't need this. This is actually more of an open water thing, but I am going to bring it with on some of these early ice outings. Just because the ice can be a little sketchy. This is an inflatable life vest from Bass Pro. So this one actually's got the manual or automatic function, so you can pull this and inflate it, or it's got a little bobbin thing in here with, I don't know how it all works. There's something that dissolves when it gets wet and it makes it inflate by itself. I actually had this inflate on me over the summer. I had left it in my kayak and it started raining really hard, and the kayak filled up with just a little bit of water, but I think it was just enough to submerge this thing and set it off. So that's a nice thing to have. Definitely less bulky than wearing a traditional PFD. So nice to have too if you're out on ice that could be a little sketchier. At the same time, we're also going to be bringing with a spud and kind of checking our way as we go out there. Speaking of which, these are another just kind of a safety thing. So these are ice picks. Now if I can unwrap these here, I don't got them tied in a knot. Usually when I'm out there, I kind of just wear this around my neck like this, and these I'll kind of just tuck in my pocket. Usually I have a hoodie or something or a jacket, And the way they work is they got these little plastic covers, but when you put pressure on them, let's see if I can show you this. You put pressure on them, a little pick comes out. So, not that you would ever want to be on ice that you're gonna fall through, but if you were and you fell in, you can kind of grab onto the help, climb your way out with these things. Um, so it's one of those things hopefully you never have to use, but gives you a little bit of peace of mind too. I will say I've probably been on. I don't think I've been on anything thinner than 3 inches of ice. Honestly, I've definitely been in some slushy spots, and sometimes it gets a little freaky when you're in an area where there's water on top of the ice and then there's like slush on top of that. I That just doesn't make it fun to be out there. That's one thing nice about early season is you get out on the nice hard clear ice. Speaking of which, these cleat things, I forget what these are called. I think these are Frable brand. These you just buy at Walmart. I think they're maybe 10-15 bucks. Just strap it over your boot, little ice picks for you, and you won't be slipping around out there. So those are nice to have. Which reminds me, with the trout, when you're fishing so shallow early season like this, I've kind of learned just through experience, but also through watching, people who do this sort of thing more than I do. You really got to be careful with your footsteps and noise, because when the ice is clear and there's not much of it and you don't have a lot of snow, um, insulating everything, helping dampen the sound, and kind of blocking some of the light, they get pretty spooky in that shallow water. We especially saw this in a lake we fished that has really clear water, and really got to be careful, because and I do this all the time. I set up all my stuff and I'm waiting for a hit, and I get antsy, and then I'm like, oh, I should go check this rod and walk over here and look at this and go drill another hole over here and do this, and really have to be mindful of that, I think, on Saturday. All right, so baits here. Oh, this isn't that exciting. This is just some Suffix Ice Magic line. This is clear. I think the stuff I have on now. I have some orange on those tip-ups, and then, oh gosh, the 8-pound green stuff. I forget if that's Suffix or if that's Trilene ice line. But you can get ice-specific line. Just doesn't freeze up as easily. And I think for trout, 4-pound is probably perfect. This 6-pound I got just so I can also, if I do go out after walleye or something, I don't have to worry too much about my line breaking. Um, of course, and you can land pike and bigger fish on small line. It's just you got to be careful. So here's my box. So I really like this thing. This is I think this is probably meant for flies. I got it at one of our local fly shops, Superior Outfitters in Marquette. But it's it's really compact. I'll just kind of wear it like this, or stick it in my pocket and just have it on hand instead of hauling a tackle box around out on the ice everywhere I go. That's another thing. Ice fishing trout like this, you got to be on the move. It's not like going after bluegills or perch or something, where if you find a school of them, you can kind of just sit there and jig all day. Um, they the thing you'll see over and over if you start reading about how to ice fish for trout, or um, watch some of the channels where you can actually see people with the underwater cameras doing this sort of thing, is they move a lot, and sometimes they don't move in a very big area, not necessarily doing laps around the entire lake, but they don't really hang out in one spot all the time. So it helps to drill a lot of holes and kind of jump around up and down the shoreline. Try stagger different depths. That's one thing we'll probably do, is we'll probably set up a tip up pretty shallow, and then probably set another one kind of medium, and then go jig maybe a little deeper or something. Anyway, So this is nice. It's got all these little compartments with all kinds of goodies in here. I'm not going to take every single thing out, but just a few that I really like, kind of my go-to things for ice fishing for trout. Brook trout, rainbow trout, brown trout. Haven't actually caught a lake trout with any of these, but I haven't really done a lot of lake trout fishing through the ice, just a little bit. And the one I did catch was actually on a tip up with a live minnow. Well, I really like these, and if you watch the Fishing Doctor's Adventures, he'll talk about these too. These are called slender spoons, so they have a nice bend to them. A lot of action in the water. This is the gold and glow. So this one, whoops, there we go. This one has a glow in the dark patch on it. These have a really nice action, and they're pretty lightweight, but you don't need to move them much to make them kind of dance around the water. Yeah, definitely have attracted a few nice rainbow trout with those. What else? Another kind of in a similar vein, one that's I've had a lot of success with, just jigging in the shallows for these different trout, are these. So these are really small Swedish pimples. This is the orange ice, and this is the white ice. So it's kind of got a sort of a what's the word I'm looking for here? Iridescent kind of rainbow sticker on it. They make other patterns too with glow in the dark and reflective ones and stuff, but these ones are really nice. This orange, well, the white one too, but the orange one really, this one just seems to be, when the fish are biting especially, really bring them in. Really like those. I have a whole series here, and I can kind of hold them up. There we go. You can kind of see them in the bottom corner there, of these little tungsten ice jigs, all different kinds. Some glow in the dark. I got Fire Tiger. I got a bunch actually. These Wonder Bread ones, the white with the different colored dots. I have some other jigs I haven't really used much. I have some hair jigs in here. I always want to use these. This, I don't think this is the same brand, but it's essentially the same thing as a Haley jig. So it's kind of like a blade with a little chain and a hook down below. I haven't actually caught a fish with those, but I always feel like they should do well. Another one that I haven't really had a lot of success with trout, but I feel like it could potentially be good. I've actually had pike and little walleye caught on this, but this is a little shiver minnow from Moonshine Lures. This thing, when you get it glowing, they make big ones too, specifically for, jigging walleye and pike and stuff. This one I've used for perch, I've used for trout, and this thing will glow like crazy. If you've ever used any of the Moonshine products, they really can hold that glow for quite a long time. That's pretty much everything of interest in here. Like I said, I've got some other jigging spoons and hair jigs. I just got some plain hooks in here. I guess I'll show these. I bought these specifically for fishing some of the brook trout lakes I fish in the summer that are artificial lures only, and I haven't actually caught anything with them yet. They kind of look like a little squid thing or a jellyfish, but I don't know. I'm waiting for a fish on one of these. I feel like it's kind of interesting looking. They kind of got a cool little action to them. Might try those out ice fishing this year. Well, that's pretty much it for my setup. I don't think I really have anything else in here too interesting. As far as baits, I have a whole bunch of different gulp baits that I also use during the summer, but usually ice fishing, I've personally just had the most success with either waxworms are probably the easiest. They last a long time. I find that the fish don't really care if they're alive or dead, as long as you get some. They're mainly to just put a little scent on your bait. I know some people will ice fish, just with a hair jig or just with a Swedish pimple or a little spoon without any bait on it, which that's fine too. Um, those are probably my go-to. Like I said, I've caught some pretty decent sized brown trout and rainbow trout on really tiny jigs with just a little waxworm. Wigglers are great. The little mayfly nymphs, if you can find them. The one downside to those is they get messy. A lot of bait shops don't like to keep them around because they die off so fast. I think they have a very long lifespan, and they're they're hard to keep from freezing too. When you're carrying them around in the little plastic cup. Um, most places sell them in a little like condiment cup almost, and but those can work really good too. Caught some nice rainbow trout with those. Sometimes live minnows. One of the lakes we've fished where we've caught some big brook trout. They were actually retired brood stock, which whatever. Sometimes a big fish is a big fish, regardless of where it came from. But um, live minnows worked really well. There might have been a few splake mixed in that batch too. It's hard to tell. Like I said, I've caught a small lake trout ice fishing with a live minnow. Haven't had as much luck with the browns and rainbows. One of the main rainbow lakes I fish, they really seem to prefer small stuff. I know I've brought minnows there and had them on tip ups, and I've had the tip ups go off and then the fish be gone. So I've found that downsizing hooks and baits, um, it's been surprising, but for people who are more experienced than me, probably not. Um, that sometimes bigger fish will hit smaller baits. So I guess I'll end with just how do you get started in this and figure out where to fish? Because in the age of social media and different, you can go on Facebook and join different groups and pages and learn about some of your local waters. But um, a lot of people who fish for trout are pretty quiet about it. They're just, they're more, they're they're not as prolific breeders as some of the warm water fish like bass and bluegill and things, and so they ought to be managed a little more carefully. Which that's a whole thing for another day. Um, anyway, my point is, figuring out which lakes are worthwhile can be kind of tricky, and sometimes it's trial and error. Because the easiest place to start, and I'll pull this up, but you probably won't really be able to see it here. The easiest thing is to just go, yeah, it just is a glowing phone screen, if it'll ever adjust. That's the 2022 Michigan Fishing Guide. All you got to do is a quick Google search for MIDNR Fishing Guide 2022. I'll put a link in the video description here. Although this will be, it's updated every year, so this will go until March 31st of next spring, and then starting April 1st next year there'll be, the next year's edition. But one thing with this guide, and you can still find paper copies of these sometimes at your local bait stores or gas stations, but I feel like they're becoming more common. It's more common to use them online. So I just have this PDF downloaded to my phone, and just have it with me while I'm fishing and kind of review the regulations. I know them pretty well at this point, but it's the same thing as when I've talked on here about some of the lakes I fish during the open water season. The only difference is for ice. Um, when you get to this section on the trout and salmon regulations, which starts on page 42 of the guide here, um, it's right after the section where it shows all the pictures of the different species, and oh, there we go. Hey, it adjusted. So it's right after this. I'm going to do this one more time because you get to this page where it's got these types of trout lakes. So there's type A, B, C, D, E, and F. Um, Type F, I don't even know if we have any of those in the UP. Those are drowned river mouths. So I've seen a few in Lower Michigan. Like the mouth of the Muskegon River is one I've seen, and other ones where you get migratory trout, from Lake Michigan, coming in and going upstream. Anyway, so the type A, B, C, D, E, we have all those up in the UP. Um, Type A and type D, those are your most common ones, and those are the ones that are closed at the end of October. So they open the same day as your trout streams, your typical brook trout stream, because there are a lot of rivers and waters that are open year round. But the ones that open, that last Saturday in April, the one difference now the last 2 years is that the streams typically close. Well, they do close the last day of September, where these type A and D lakes are now open through the end of October. Anyway, those are out of the picture for ice fishing. So you're left with type B and C, which I think there's some C's in the UP. They're I don't really know where any of them are though. Um, but the ones that I've fished are either type B, type E, or not listed at all. There are some lakes that have pretty good populations of trout. They're stocked lakes. They're not listed in here at all because they just don't manage them very strictly. So those ones, and there's a note in here, those ones kind of fall under the other category, which is it's pretty loose. You can keep 5 fish from those lakes, and they only have to be 8 inches long. Um, so, a few of those ones, and again, I usually don't name drop lakes, but these ones aren't a secret. They're pretty heavily fished, but a few in my area that are like that, where they're not listed as one of these letter types, but they do have trout in them, and are worth ice fishing, would be Lake Angeline in Ishpeming. It's actually an old mine pit that caved in and flooded, and it's been managed for trout for quite a few years now. They actually stock it with pretty much every species. So there's brook trout, rainbow trout, brown trout, lake trout, and splake. Um, I don't really know all the rationale behind all of that. I do know I've caught very few fish out of it, but some of the rainbow trout have been really, really excellent size. Um, I know we caught one just trolling a rapala that was right around the 20-inch mark, which is pretty great. And I know there have been people who've caught pretty big lake trout through the ice there too. The other one that comes to mind that's kind of in this other category, so the fish only have to be 8 inches to keep, is Alberta Pond. It's about halfway between, well, it's actually pretty close to Lawrence. It's basically just outside the village of Lawrence, little roadside impoundment. There's a whole cool history there with Henry Ford and the sawmill. Um, Michigan Tech owns that property now, but that's a fun lake to ice fish sometimes. And a lot of the fish in there are retired brood stock or whatever. But again, sometimes a big fish is just a big fish. So those are easy access. They can be a lot of fun. They can also be really frustrating, but you won't have to go too far off the beaten path. All right, enough about that. So the type B's, and there's one E that I've fished too, but the type B's. So the type B lakes, they're open all year, and I'm just getting this from this page in the guide where it describes it. Open all year. You can use any sort of tackle. So some of the designated trout lakes, well, the A's, so that's the most common one. I fish those a lot in the summer in my kayak. You cannot bring minnows on those lakes. You can use anything else. You can use worms. You can use, um, you know, sometimes corn or different, food items. Um, but you cannot use minnows. And then the type D are the artificial lures only. So you're limited to, anything that's not, you know, alive or ever was alive. So gulp is okay on those power bait, Rapalas, spoons, anything like that. The type B, so you can use any bait all year. It's got the same 5/3 regulations for keeping fish. So you can keep 5 fish, but no more than three can be over 15 inches. Um, when you get into the size regulations here, they're basically the same for type B as for type A. So brook trout have to be 10 inches. Um, and then rainbow trout, brown trout, splake have to be 12. Lake trout have to be 15. And then it gets into salmon and stuff, which we don't really have inland salmon that I'm aware of. It'd be cool if we did. Um, Typically, I've found that these type Bs are going to be rainbow trout lakes, brown trout lakes. There are a few brook trout lakes though that are type B. So you're looking at a 10-inch minimum, and any sort of tackle. So the lake we're going to this Saturday, it's a type B. It's got rainbows and browns. So we're pretty much, if we did want to keep a fish, we'd be looking at 12 inches for either rainbow or brown. So that's pretty simple. The one lake where this gets a little complicated, and this, you kind of have to use your discretion here, and consider, just because the regulation lets you do it, should you. There's a lake that's a type B, so you can fish it all year. We've ice fished it before, and it has brook trout and splake. Now, the size limit for a brook trout is 10 inches, but for splake is 12. Now, those get really hard to tell apart. I think on one of the episodes, I talked about fishing out there, and there were a few of us, and we were catching a lot of these freshly stocked brood stock fish. But whatever, I digress. That, and we weren't sure. Are these brook trout? Are they splake? It was hard to tell. Some of the brook trout you could tell they were probably fresh from the hatchery because they had frayed fins and tails, and kind of looked beat up like a lot of those hatchery raised fish. But then there were some others that the fully intact, but it looked just like a brook trout. I don't know. And the conservation officer who came out and talked with us, who was just kind of checking licenses and stuff, he couldn't tell either. So I guess my point is, we kind of deferred to the 12-inch size limit, and it wasn't really an issue. None of the brook trout we caught were, I think the smallest one was around 13 inches, so it wasn't a problem. So that's type B. Type E, there's only 11 lakes in the whole state that fall under that. And it kind of seems like the purpose of the E regulation is to make it a little more strict, produce a little nicer sized fish, hopefully, but not be as strict as like the type D lakes where it's artificial tackle and one fish limit, stuff like that. So I've actually had some really good success on a particular type E lake that I fished for brown trout. Fished it this summer too, and caught lake trout and splake as well. But really excited about the browns again this winter. So those ones you can only keep 3 fish. They got to be 15 inches. So you're looking at a little nicer size fish there. But that's really the best place to start. From there, thinking about whether it's worth fishing, you kind of just got to try it. Some of these lakes are pretty easy to access, and you can drive right up to them in the winter. And some of them, I think of there's a particular there's actually 2 brook trout ponds, and they both are open year round, so you can ice fish them. One we've ice fished before, and hoping to do again here, in a few weeks. You can basically drive right to it. It's right off the road. The other, which is only a few miles away, is it's down a seasonal road, and so it's in kind of a big snow area too of the UP. So getting a truck in there, gets it's basically not doable unless it's early in the season. We've been into this pond once, and it was in the springtime. All the snow was gone. It's hike in, so you can drive if the road is clear. You can drive, you know, and kind of park alongside the road here, and you have about, they say it's about a 600-foot walk through the woods up over this ridge down to the pond. Um, so that one being open during the winter, I guess I don't know who's crazy enough to try that. I don't know. Maybe there's some really amazing untapped potential there, to hike in, and I think especially in the springtime, if you had it in you to snowshoe in or take a snowmobile in, it's not that far down the road. And then, if the snow wasn't super deep, if it was kind of crusted over, I think it would be doable. Would it be a lot of work? Yeah. I don't know if it would be worth it. I will say the one visit we had to this pond in the springtime, we didn't have a single bite, and we kind of tried every trick in the book that we had. Um, so I'm probably not going to be going back. But again, there's others that you can drive right up to. The one we're going to this Saturday, right now we don't have a whole lot of snow. Um, there's barely, there's still some in the woods, but it's pretty iced over at this point after the rain we got. And you can pretty much drive in anywhere right now. And so this lake, you can drive pretty much right up to the public access right now. Later in the winter, it's really only going to be accessible by snowmobile, or, if you want to take snowshoes or something. Um, the main road is plowed right up to the access road, and then the access road is about maybe a third of a mile in. So, you can still do it later in the winter, but we're going there because I know there's good ice. I stood out on it last Friday, and we now after we had this warm up last weekend, um, um, it's been pretty cold now the last few days. So I think there'll be some good ice again, and I think it'll only get better from here. And not having a blanket of wet, heavy snow on top, I think it's going to make for good conditions. So that's pretty much all I have. Um, Really, really excited to get out on first ice here. The action can be really fast and furious, and as these trout are kind of getting ready for winter, and feeding a lot. So that's the interesting thing about trout too, is they don't really go dormant in the winter like some warm water fish do. They're pretty active and on the move. But this early ice, just something about that kind of seems to trigger a feeding frenzy, and you can catch them super shallow too. That's another fun thing, is being able to sight fish. When you're only sitting in a few feet of water, and actually watch these fish come up and take your jigs. So, really excited to get out. We're gonna try to get some footage with the GoPro. My buddy who's coming, DC, he's got an actual GoPro. I have the kind of the knockoff version that I got from Amazon for $25, but we'll try to get some footage, try to get some pictures and some video, and hopefully in a upcoming episode here get some of that for you. So if you're so inclined, go get out, find a lake that's got some ice on it. I know the guys at Gwyn Bait and Tackle kind of posted some options on their Facebook page for Marquette County, and I know there's other areas of the UP that probably had good ice for a while now. So get out, check it out. But that's kind of an overview of what I'm using and how I figure out where to go ice fishing for these trout. Thanks for listening to Saturday Sauna Night. I am Steve.